Can you smell that, ladies and gentlemen? We are almost at Acropolis number 2 Battlement stage, the main stage, probably the stage that has, I would guess, the highest level of excitement. We've got 2 more players in the running for this next phase after a grueling double elimination, double gauntlet stage qualifier set. We are into the last match of both qualifiers, of Gauntlet Stage B, but of both qualifiers. Ladies and gentlemen, the Gauntlet stage ends here, and tomorrow, the Battlement stage begins. So I hope you'll join us for that. Today we're going to be taking a look at SmrtyCakes versus Kenoli. Best of 5, and of course we have our veto available here on your screen. You can see Spinaltap was the first pick of SmrtyCakes after banning Check Stealer. Rage Slave goes by the wayside. Kenoli maybe not practiced on it or not interested in playing it. Near Impact will be his pick. So already I'm interested in this because if you remember, SmrtyCakes took both Spinaltap and Near Impact versus Jack Yelansky, who I personally would say is a stronger RTS or Cosmonarchy player than Kenoli is. So this matchup, I do favor SmrtyCakes just looking at the veto. Following that, we have Muspelheim, another good ban versus Zerg. And then Blackwater Bastion, just a generic sort of macro-oriented map. Kind of interesting that Kenoli wants to maybe keep things to the shorter spawns. Paradise gets picked by SmrtyCakes. He did not win that versus Jack Yelansky. Of course, that's Jack's favorite map. But Smarty seems happy to give it a try. And then we will close with Demilune and Genesis Y if they are needed. Genesis Y as a decider, that's a very rare thing in these vetoes. But you know what? I'm fine with it. Let's see what we get when we go into Spinaltap. Oh boy, it's the last time I'm going to have to cast a Gauntlet stage match in 2024 because our next Acropolis will be in the next year. But for now, SmrtyCakes is our Ultramarine Protoss in the bottom left, and Kenoli is our Pumpkin Zerg in the top right. He's always Pumpkin. He hasn't caught on to the idea of switching from Pumpkin to Electric Orange. He's decided maybe not to bother with that, so... there's like pumpkin, electric orange, mango. There's a bunch of those colors that, like, for me personally, it kind of can throw me for a loop. Now, Kenoli is harvesting Vespene, and so too is SmrtyCakes. So SmrtyCakes feels like maybe that lattice-oriented strategy is enough to bring him the bacon. But I will point out a correction to a video I recorded earlier. That was, of course, the Smarty Jack set. And I mentioned that I thought that Enozlix was the admin because it had like the official name of the thing here. You can see it's just Acropolis Gauntlet. That's the Shambler adminning this series. Shout out to Shambler. I should have done a better job of like shouting out whoever admined these sets because that is a huge job. Jujic did like a staggering 30-something series, I think, when I calculated it all out. So that's fucking crazy, dude. Shout out to Jujic, but shout out Shambler for adminning this set. It was actually Kenoli who adminned the previous set, and that is a mad situation. Like, Kenoli must have been licking his chops like, oh, you're going to be going this lattice-oriented strategy? Well, I guess I'll scout to see if you're going to do the same thing, but I've downloaded you. I know the weaknesses. I saw Jack beat it. I saw, the maybe weaknesses that Jack didn't even exploit, like obviously going pool first or whatever is a potential option here versus lattice-oriented builds because they come online a little bit slower. Sims are more vulnerable than something like a Zealot or an Ecclesiast or a Dracodon. It will be a first Simulacrum coming out for SmrtyCakes. Kenoli not going to opt for the pool opening. Really interesting stuff already, but I just wanted to throw that out there that Kenoli was the match admin for the set between Jack Yelansky and SmrtyCakes that went the full distance, full 5 games. He knows what he's up against. He's getting a lot of gas as well, but no Kgrant. Makes me wonder if he's not just going to go straight into Vornath and kind of gamble, because his Droleth is still out here entertaining the Simulacrum and maybe sort of scouting its position. No, it is actually going to be a secondary Kgrant, maybe just a little bit slow on the trot there on Kenoli's side. By the way, it's worth pointing out that if availability is willing, I will 1000% be putting the lowest seed of the tournament. That's whoever qualifies from the last chance qualifier, which stands to reason. So I didn't tell the guys this, but they're playing for the honor of not just being in battlements, but also, maybe a little bit, playing against Hit 'em Up or something like that. Some Titan in the battlement stage. So they will not be favored to proceed further. Now we do have a nice little setup here with the Vornath already on the way. Kenoli is going to be able to hide that, courtesy of his fast set of Zeths and Quas. And now we're seeing kind of like a more military-oriented start to the Simulacrum train. And of course, the idols will be able to deal with this. I don't hate this because it does give the Zerg a little bit more tempo. I would love to see Smarty actually like take these sims and maybe pan them out a little bit across the map. If they fan out and cover a lot of ground, then they can also loop back in and check on what the Zerg is doing. You want to check on what the Zerg is doing as frequently as you can because you want to see what's coming out of their eggs. This is a concept from StarCraft 1. I'm sure it still applies in StarCraft 2. Of course, people are having difficulty finding the tools to actually do that in Cosmonarchy by comparison because you don't have fast workers, so you can't just keep that out until the like ling speed finishes, right? In PvZ, for example. And even beyond that, you know, people go Lattice first, but they don't go Vassal, right? And so they don't actually fly a Vassal in just to see what's going on. I feel like that would be an option there. It's going to be a pretty big military flood here. The Vornath was made specifically for Vorvs and not for air units. And you can tell because there's no gas being mined. I mean, there's some gas being mined, and he actually is banking a lot. Going to go on, drop a hatch, and we have a lot of idols. We have a lot of sims. There's a defensive warden warping in. The Vassal's going to come out and scout as the military is fanning out here. And this, I think, is just going to be a very quick military wipe. Let's see what Smarty can do, but it's just been, this is basically an all-in play. Even though there is a hatch coming in from behind, he's got no workers by comparison. So Smarty's going to end up losing his military. He had idols coming up. I almost wonder if he couldn't have extended play there, but he just felt like he was going to be too behind. Remember, the longer your opponent is only going for military, the less likely it is that they're going to have economy behind it. But he concedes the game anyway, maybe too demoralized losing his units like that. One thing that is a little bit difficult versus Zerg is if they're going to go Vorvs, they get that ensnare on hit. That is going to allow the Zerg to benefit there. And Smarty just, he had a comp that needed like two more like macro cycles of idols. And then it could have really contested with that army really nicely because we saw in the Jack set, the idols just destroy the front line eventually if they get enough shots in, and then obviously they're going to cream quads. So yeah, in that situation, a very surprising, like immediate ending to that match. Let's go straight into map 2. All right, near impact is here. Here impact. It's going to be the Pumpkin Zerg in the top left for Kenoli. Reflexively taking a look at that card. I always know it's Pumpkin. I always know it's Pumpkin, guys. Wink, wink. And SmrtyCakes is down here in the bottom right. This looks like eggshell blue to me. It is indeed, okay. So Smarty's got to shake off that loss there. Gonna go for the gas early on, just like Kenoli is. So still no early pool shenanigans going to be the way of the warrior here. Kenoli is indeed going to just be going for that Larvosk. By the way, update on my French learning. One of the things that I said in a recent cast was, you know, I should figure out what du jour means. And it turns out it means like prepared for the day. So it's like of the day, right, is essentially what it's supposed to be. So, you know, if I say strategy du jour, I'm talking about this is what Kenoli's prepared for this matchup or whatever. Anyway, he's not really prepared much of anything. He's just making Larvosk. He's just pushing V, as the kids would say, because that's what Jack Yalansky said. Somebody was mentioning that in the Discord server too. There's definitely been like some shenanigans I've not been keeping apprised of. Partially because, you know, I cast all of these games and they go up on the channel. That means I don't cast any of the practice matches that get uploaded for me to take a look at. So I have no idea what's going on over there, but definitely check those out in the Discord server if you're interested. And while I'm talking about things you can do, you can also join our coffee page, not just our Discord server. It is linked in the description. Both of those are. If you want to hang out with our community, Discord server is the place to be. You want to get perks and maybe get some moolah sent our way and in exchange for the work we do, well, that's also where you can go straight into Ye Old Coffee page. It's a great resource for us. It has helped both myself and Veek7, my brother in Crost. My brother in Crost. He's a cool dude. Shout out Veek. I almost dropped my bottle cap there. I'm going to take a sip because that's what we do when we talk about coffee. So we do have the double lattice opener yet again. I'm going to go ahead and pan up here with the keyboard instead of the middle mouse button. I'm sure you guys can forgive me. Pool now up and running for Kenoli. He is going to go for that fast second Larvosk. He's banking a lot of larva and going to go straight into Zeth's. And I think he just kind of wants to do the same thing. I'm not sure what Smarty's adaptation is going to be to that, right? Because one of the main things that made this a really hard matchup in that first map there was because the Sims didn't get across the map to see that it was going to be a more military-minded play. Like, Jack was regularly going closer to 15, 18, 20 workers sometimes before his first military move out would happen. And now the Sim is going to go ahead and catch this and see, okay, you've made a lot of Zets. I got to pull this other Sim back. I got to start staffing the ramp. He's already switched into idols, which is a good thing because they do deal with Zeths really nicely, so long as there's no Vorvs slowing them down. So actually, I should expect that since these two idols, well, one of these idols will be done by the time the Zeths hit, I don't think that this should be nearly as consequential as the previous hit. And in fact, it doesn't even look like Kenoli is going to attempt it. So he's just going to go ahead and fall back. I don't know that going heavy lattice in this context is always the best move, but it does afford you some really nice defensive play. Like if you're trying to springboard yourself directly into a fast expansion, and you kind of have two things you can do. We saw if you're going up against a passive Zerg player who's trying to bank their eco, get a fast expansion, etc. That's what Jack was doing, and Smarty was able to chain together some really nice 1-2 punches with that. But now versus Kenoli, he's going to have to use the same tools in a more defensive stance, and he's going to have to also, on top of that, go for a mostly Nexus-oriented strategy to scale out, because you can't sit... I was talking with Hit 'em Up earlier today about this, actually. You can't just sit on Lattice Tech versus Zerg, especially since we have a Hydra Den coming up. That's going to be a really big deal. Hydras do deal a lot better with idols than the rest of the pool units, right? You can see this is definitely not the firing line that Kenoli wants to be taking. So Smarty has just thinned out the herd a little bit. He's executed a few Zeths, bruised a couple of Vorvs, and so on and so forth. So that's going to be a much easier front line to deal with. But Smarty's doubling down on the early game units, and I feel like this is actually the mistake. You don't want to be making lattices past your point of pressure, I guess you could say. Like, I would argue as a heuristic, if I haven't been able to get damage after going 3 lattice in the early game, there's not much of a reason to go 4th lattice. You know, I'm not necessarily going to be able to turn it. I guess the one thing that I could say that might poke holes in my argument is if there's not as much of an investment in military units now, because you can see Kenoli is trying to power up on workers a little bit here before switching back into military units now that his Hydra Den is finished, then maybe you can actually use your military advantage to push out and deal with this. Now, the one Zeth is going to get caught here pretty easy, but it is also going to indicate to Kenoli that there's a bit of a potential to backstab with his pool units. And this is a case where you got to be really careful as Smarty. That's one of the reasons why I think you do, if you're going to go lattice, you have the benefit of having really cheap units like the Sim that you can just kind of fan out and move around with. And otherwise, you might want to consider, leaving your rallies at home until you've actually gone across the map and forced a reaction from the opponent, because that will insulate you from a lot of those moves. Now, a random Zeth out in the middle of the map, this is going to force Kenoli's hand. He's going to immediately unburrow and start to move up here. Now, there's double Warden, double Pylon. I actually think this is brilliant in theory, except for Kenoli's also moving across the map, and SmrtyCakes has only now realized, and he's now going to go ahead and swing out. He's got that little ridge over here for cliff advantage. That's actually going to be really consequential for him. Meanwhile, a lot of these units are just kind of on a haphazard course. As the idols are spawning, they're kind of walking a little bit far away. The workers need to get in on this and actually peel off to stop this Warden from going down, but it's not happening just yet. Instead, Smarty going to instantiate the trade. We do have the base race in full effect here. A lot of workers going down for Smarty. He does not have a second Nexus, and there is, of course, the golems and the idols being made. Over here, a couple of Hydras being popped. That Hatch Rusk is going to go down. I don't know what happened. I feel like, yeah, he actually just walked away with his military units. So, okay, well, I mean, he's going to go back to mining. I guess it's not the end of the world for Smarty, but it does feel like, with the Hydras out, there is a very, very short timer before Smarty's army is just going to get creamed. He definitely won't be able to move up the ramp. Now, Kenoli has a lot of minerals. He is going to go straight into 10 Vorvs, and he's also channeling his inner Bactylisk. He's going to go ahead and try to benefit from that. That kind of situation will 100% wipe the military on an even playing field, or, God forbid, a Zerg-favored playing field with a cliff. Now, that being said, Smarty can just fall back and try to reset and play a little bit on the defensive side, but he doesn't really have any tools versus what Kenoli is pumping out. Now, all of the Vorvs, a lot of them have actually fallen already, but the Hydras, you can see, they get right up close and personal, and they are going to be able to target down those idols. They've backed against a corner. He's got a couple more units coming in on the other side. A lot of them are idle, actually. That could have been helpful, but it was not going to be enough. We see the, I was trying to double click on the Hydras to see what they were. We see that the level is there in terms of the number of Hydras. Kenoli takes another match. I guess Smarty must be feeling a little bit uncomfortable. I don't know. I feel like this 2 games now where the first game, I actually think it was still playable, but obviously he was going to be disadvantaged after losing so many units. That being said, you got to remember, okay, Zerg can't literally do everything. Like, sure, he's got a hatch coming, but he's got no workers relative to you. In that second game, a lot of his units kind of just hung out on their rallies and then walked across the map instead of actually defending the paltry force that attacked in. He didn't pull his workers to try to drill there, all that stuff, right? And I really do think that Kenoli would have been riposted without doing hardly any economic damage. You kill his hatch, much. Then you try to take your own expand and maybe go into some tech to, you've scouted the Hydras at that point because he cleared his force in the middle of the map and like forced it to retreat. So that makes me feel like, anyway, overall, if you just take a breath at that moment and really consider what you need to do, because it's obviously a chaotic moment. He's maybe in that base trade mindset versus Jack Yelansky the few times that he was doing that in that last series. All right, we got at least one more map. We're going to go to Paradise for map 3. Let's see if it is Protoss Paradise and we get an extended series. Otherwise, Kenoli could be completing the shortest best of 5 that we've actually had so far, and it'll be a little bit of an anticlimax. Let's see what happens. And here we have it, folks. Kenoli, the Pumpkin Zerg in the bottom left. And cross bonds, SmrtyCakes in the top right as the Cyan Protoss. Oh, it's Alice Blue. Never mind. All right, well, I got one color guess wrong. I guess so. It can't all be perfect. Pumpkin Man. Yeah, thanks, Shambler. Oh, I guess maybe he was also trying to guess the colors. Or maybe he knew the colors and he was just typing them and then said fight to the death. Yeah, this is do or die. This is last chance, ladies and gentlemen. SmrtyCakes is facing elimination from the tournament. I will say, people who participated in Acropolis number 2's gauntlet stages, they actually got a pretty penny. I mean, every win in the upper bracket, $10. Every win in the lower bracket, $5. Originally, I was actually going to make it a less of a payout in gauntlet stage B, because I was thinking hypothetically, like, it's not really that much of an amount of money that's different, but I wouldn't want you to be like, oh, let me just play deep into Gauntlet Stage A, throw, and then play deep in Gauntlet Stage B and win that way. Like, you know, the idea of like maximizing your paycheck, right? But at the end of the day, that plus, obviously, I don't necessarily have all of the money in the world to just hand out. Neblime and Biddy B's company, the pickup partner, have both sponsored our tournament very nicely here. So we do have a very nice prize pool, very, very eye-catching one. And I think I won't hold him to this because it wasn't confirmed, but I do believe that there was a few other people hit him up, and maybe a few, I can't remember. There's somebody else who was talking about maybe throwing in some cash. However much it is, it will go towards the players, of course, and a little bit towards, actually operating the tournament, since it is a difficult task. Now we do have Double Gate. This is a very different strategy. He's going to go Legionnaire. I saw base trade from Hupsea against Art of Turtle recently on his stream. You can go check out his VODs, Hupsea on YouTube. And he indeed was playing Legionnaire, Mass Gate Legionnaire, I think it's 4-gate, and he just ran over Art of Turtle. Just kind of caught him in the middle of the map and in transition, and then ran up the ramp and executed him. And he was like leading up to that, he was talking about how if he can't beat a Zerg by 4-gating, then he should absolutely 100% uninstall the game. So I thought that was pretty funny. I was like, well, you know what? Your excuse to uninstall the game has been delayed for now. SmrtyCakes is indeed going to be going for that Legionnaire strat. He has caught where Kenoli is at. And it is actually a pretty delayed pool. It feels to me like, oh, okay, all right, I like this from SmrtyCakes. He's going to force some attention there. He's already softened up that worker, and a Legionnaire is en route. We've got a couple more. Smarty, you need to get that Legionnaire in. You need to get that Legionnaire in on the action, my man. The pool's not even close to being done. He's actually going to run past the stuff there. He's going to go ahead and sabotage the worker runs. Let's see what happens. 3 Legionnaires being produced per round. He's got more coming. That pylon is pretty close to being destroyed. Now he's running away. He hasn't actually killed a worker down there in the bottom left inside the main area. A lot of workers very, very low, but it's not actually happening just yet here for Kenoli, nor for Smarty. Okay, the pool is done. He's going to go ahead and go for a Circuit defensively. That was not sniped, so that feels like a little bit of an oopsie moment. There's going to be 4 pairs of Zeths coming out as well. Smarty's control is lacking a little bit here. He's just going to go ahead and allow his Legionnaires to fight that Circuit, which I don't necessarily hate, but I also feel like, when you know that your opponent is probably going to be going for some Zeths, I'm not sure that that's the move. Pulling the workers, it makes a lot of sense here. This Warden should get overwhelmed very quickly. It's only going to go ahead and get a couple of shots off, and it looks like the Legionnaires have been routed for now. It really feels like Smarty could have done a lot more with the situation. But you know what? Even after that, he forced so much out of his opponent. He's got 4 gates, all blinking. He's going to go into Zealots now. I would love to see him park these Legionnaires maybe behind the mineral line, or, I mean, it's fine to also move him through here, just so that you can scout what your opponent is doing. Definitely want to control him a little bit better than that. You see the Zeths heading across the map. You got your own Zealots, so you're not really that worried. And you're going to keep his Zeths on the other side. They are speedy boys. They can run around and see what they can do. Oh boy, one of them's getting caught. Oh, abandoned. He could have done a trick shot, like a cute little move there, and attacked one of the Zeths. I love keeping the guys running around. This is very similar to like slowlings versus a worker in StarCraft 1. That's very, very similar to the same energy with the SmrtyCakes trying to move his Legionnaire a lot. Obviously very APM intensive. Kenoli has a lot of money, not really a whole lot of ways to spend it. He doesn't have his third Larvosk up in the normal time. He's going to go straight into Hydroth. His Zets are flying across the map, of course, or I guess running across the map. They don't have wings. They are not Vorvs. And even if they did have wings, they wouldn't be able to fly. That's what the Nathacore is for. All right, well, the Zealots actually decide to leave the base a little bit sooner than I would expect. Maybe they'll just go ahead and surround the Ecclesiast. Instead, he's going to try to dive in and do some harassment to the workers. But again, maybe he could go after the pylon too if he wanted to harass some stuff. He's not actually moving his units very, very nicely here. A couple of workers are likely to go down. Actually, not a single worker has died yet. Surely not. Oh my God, not a single worker goes down. All right, Smarty, you're still in this, my man. You've got a lot of Zealots, a lot of Legionnaires. What are you going to do with them, though? A lot of Quas on the ramp. That's definitely going to be a defensive posture for Kenoli. It does feel like Zerg still has the tempo because they can just go straight into a hatch at this point. Like, they don't really need to do much. I mean, that being said, the hatch will definitely get killed by all of these melee units. A couple of Ecclesiasts are also being made. He's going to go ahead and drop a Warden for the potential air switch because, again, he hasn't scouted his opponent, doesn't know if the Vornath is coming. Instead, it's going to be a Hydra then. 3 Hydras being made. The quads count is very, very high, and it doesn't really feel like there's enough Ecclesiasts to keep Zealots alive, despite the fact that Zealots are very, very effective versus the Quasilisk. Like, the armor is just way too strong. However, the Hydras do a little bit better. They have no armor pen, but they have 10 damage, and that upfront damage is one attack instead of 2. This is 2x3. With only 1 armor pen, that means that they are reduced by 2 armor. It's basically 2x1 versus Zealots while the shields hold. But you can see there's so many of them that it doesn't quite matter. And then, of course, it gets a little bit better when the shields fall because then the armor goes down to 2. Simple calculations, obviously. Easy math. Now, this is a lot of pool units, and then there's a couple of Hydras to throw in there as well. And it looks like Smarty is... okay, he's conceding. Okay, I was wondering what was going on there because he was just kind of hanging. And... I have it on good authority these replays worked. So I'm just going to assume he just kind of was like, damn, this guy's got a lot of units. And Kenoli has qualified in to the Battlement stage. I really am surprised to see him here, but I will not say no to yet another Zerg. It's the age of the Zerg, apparently. The pool Zerg gamer. It's not the ogre Zerg gamer. It's the pool Zerg gamer. And Kenoli is indeed living up to the hype. SmrtyCakes, man, I really thought he'd be able to make it. You go back to before the tournament began, before the gauntlet stages began. I was gobsmacked to see him sent down to the lower bracket by Kenoli. I thought it was really interesting that he did much better versus other Zerg players. He traded 2-1 with, he lost 2-1 to Gerald Storm, a much better Zerg player from a mechanics standpoint. He traded 2-1 versus the Night Fox, I would say a pretty strong Zerg player as well, and one of them that I definitely would put up there. I mean, he took Arda Turtle down, right? I don't think Smarty ever played AOT in the gauntlet stages, but that's like... he's obviously won 5 games with Jack Yelansky. To see him falter at the last hurdle here, I really wonder what happened, because I loved his adaptations with the Sims. I loved his adaptations with the Lattices, but it was just not to be. Kenoli will take the set, sweeping it into Battlement stage. And you know what? I mean, he's had a tough start to his career, right? He's not been the highest seeded player, so he hasn't gotten the most favorable matchups, but he was able to defeat SmrtyCakes. He was able to defeat Hapsea, by far his biggest scalp taken. And the fact that he 2-0'd him in the opener of Gauntlet Stage A, in the case of SmrtyCakes, and 3-0'd him here in the last chance qualifier, I mean, it's a statement win from Kenoli, the guy who's just rocked up and decided he would participate and smash, his way through. Cool guy. That being said, I think that we should probably take a moment and have a moment of silence for the people who are not going to be with us. A moment of silence for the players who have not qualified or have chosen not to participate. We will go ahead and shout out Arbuz Budesh, a Protoss player I thought for sure was a lock to make it through, narrowly avoided qualifying through Gauntlet Stage A, sat out Gauntlet Stage B. Much the same can be said. Mystery Meat, the most winningest player in Cosmonarchy history, the most accomplished man to play this game. He has bowed out after being 3-0'd by Aoud in the lower qualifier B of Gauntlet Stage A. So unfortunate to not see him. Really almost feels a little bit wrong. That being said, he wasn't present in Acropolis #1. So despite the fact that he was not able to change his fate there, he did end up not participating in the second qualifier. And then Hapsea, a man who did not participate in the first qualifier. Shout out to Hapsea. He will not be joining us for this tournament, as he has indeed been defeated by first Jack Yelansky and then Kenoli. Zerg's being the menace. Zerg Cabal activated, clearly OP, and certainly a difficult adaptation for many Protosses to deal with. And that will, of course, finalize our roster list. We're talking about Hamster as the Zerg player, switching from Protoss from Acropolis #1. He managed to make it to 3rd place, but was defeated by the Shambler, who clinched 2nd place. The Shambler, a Terran player, switching from Protoss. He will also be joining us for Battlement stage as a invited player. And the reigning champion of Acropolis #1, Nebline, has indeed accepted his invite and will be here as the sole Protoss participant of Battlement stage onward. So I hope that you guys are excited for Acropolis #2. And of course, shout out to the other players who have qualified from Gauntlet Stage A. Hit 'em up as random. It was Top Ramen as Terran. And then it was Gerald Storm as Zerg and Ayud64 as Terran. And then in Gauntlet Stage B, rounding out our list that we just finished up, it was, of course, Kenoli as Zerg, closing it out versus SmrtyCakes. It was Art of Turtle as Zerg, and of course Jack Yelansky as Zerg. And then in the upper bracket, we had the Night Fox as Zerg and Shopkeeper Dog, not as Zerg, as Terran. Can you believe it? So plenty of Zergs to go around, a couple of Terrans, and only a single Protoss, as well as a single random. I hope you guys are looking forward to the tournament, and I will see you guys very soon.